Roland, we're going to jump into the rapid fire segment now. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, good. When did you first know you wanted to be an attorney?
So if there was a moment, it likely would have been at the end of my Econ 101 class in undergrad when I realized the path to Wall Street was going to be bumpy and I should come up with Plan B.
Do you have a favorite attorney or firm to litigate against?
I don't think I think of them in those terms.
Okay.
I will say this. I got a chance to spend a great deal of time with John Hooper negotiating the Takata airbag litigation. And I think John is one of those creative minds who's passionate about what he does. And I've grown to really like working with him.
In your opinion, what's been sort of the biggest change to the class action landscape over, say, the previous 5 years?
I think, Concepcion certainly has impacted evaluation of cases. I mean, the idea that the courtroom door would be closed to a whole host of bad actors is troubling. I think there's been some pushback on that. It doesn't impact my practice as much, but I think that's been a big issue. I think the rule changes and how we deal with objectors is going to present some interesting challenges going forward. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think class certification is the end of the road anymore. Mm-hmm. We're going to certainly see more trials than before. Those are the areas I think there have been changes.
What's your favorite legal movie?
My Cousin Vinny, followed by or equal Philadelphia. I like that movie.
That's a great one. What's your favorite non-legal movie?
I'm partial to serial killer mysteries, Silence of the Lambs, Seven, those types of movies.
That's interesting and somewhat concerning.
A little insight there.
Do you have a particular book that you've given as a gift throughout the course of your career that you've given to more than one person, something like that?
I don't gift books. I will say that I've enjoyed helping my 14-year-old get through the classic To Kill a Mockingbird.
Sure.
And if I were to gift a book, I think it would be nice for all of us to sort of go back and revisit some of the teachings of that book.
Well, it's on Broadway now,
yeah.
which I haven't gotten to see it yet, but it's getting pretty rave reviews.
Interesting. I'll have to take him.
What's the biggest growth area of class action law?
I think technological innovation is going to lead to litigation in various forms. So as hackers, for example, become more sophisticated, and if companies aren't keeping up, we're going to see more data breach cases. I think, apropos to your business, the way advertisers try to reach people has become a lot more personal than the old days. And when that happens, there's a premium placed on your information and your privacy. And whether there are companies harvesting it from your cell phone or other places, that effort is going to lead to litigation. I think what I mentioned earlier about automakers trying to become technology companies, we never thought we'd see the day when you introduced a vehicle at the Consumer Electronics Show. But as those things become more complex, I think we'll see more cases filed in those areas.
I agree with you, and I think, frankly, that's the tip of the iceberg. I think, algorithmic pricing class actions are not too far off in the future, and I think, I've always said, and sometimes I get criticized for, that law follows technology by about 10 years, and I think that the wrongs are being done every day, but we won't really see the full impact of the fallout from the wrongs that are being done now until 10 years from now.
I completely agree with you.
It's going to be an interesting show to watch, though, for sure. So I suspect I'll know your answer to this question based on your answer to a previous question, but which case was worse for the plaintiff's bar? Concepcion, Carrera, Dukes, Spokio?
Yeah, so I think in the short term, Concepcion, whether there's pushback in legislation and whether we can work around, using federal law to fight the idea of coercive arbitrations and class action waivers, we'll see. There's been some inroads made there, but certainly I think there are ways to get around concerns raised by some of the other cases, but Concepcion is kind of one of those cases that closes the door.
Right. So I was thinking about Concepcion in the context of your suits against mortgage servicers. So, because you said you go after the financial services companies, but they don't necessarily have a contractual relationship with the end user.
So that's the fascinating part, is that when they become a loan servicer, their contractual rights extend to the investor of the loan, not the borrower. They service the loan on behalf of the investor, and there's no privity between the mortgage servicer and the borrower, and therefore we don't have that issue. On the auto manufacturer side, it's the same thing. You purchase from a dealer, not the manufacturer, and so far there hasn't been an issue there.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, right.
Is there a nonprofit in the legal world that is particularly close to your heart?
So I'm particularly focused on children causes, Make-A-Wish Foundation, Boys and Girl Club, anything of that nature. And my daughter, who's the ultimate dog lover, has me very, very involved with the SPCA.
That's great. Do you have dogs?
I do.
What are your dogs?
I have a Yorkie named Shaggy.
I have a Morkie, which is half Maltese, half Yorkie. And I have a Old English sheepdog that's mixed with a standard poodle.
Nice.
And he's about 23 times the size of my little Morkie.
What do they say about the owner looking like the dog?
Yeah, we're going to cut all of this. Would you advise the next generation to go to law school?
Absolutely. I've never understood this notion that lawyers who practice at the level we do and enjoy what they do tell young people not to pursue. I think if I were to give any advice to a young person, I would say, do the work necessary to earn the trust of your colleagues, and you'll have a long career.
I think that's great advice. Great advice. What's the most beautiful courthouse in the United States?
I'm partial to the Ninth Circuit in San Francisco, although I must say I appeared some years ago in the federal courthouse in Butte, Montana, where there's a bullet lodged in a door because of a gunfight that occurred, and it's an interesting courthouse with a lot of history, but I'm partial to the Ninth Circuit in San Francisco, and our new courthouse here in Los Angeles is beautiful.
So you kind of answered my next question already, which was usually what I end on, which is if you had a piece of advice to give to a young lawyer, what would that be? And you said earn the trust and respect of your colleagues, which I think is great advice. If you just had to, let me ask you a different question, and it's sort of along the same lines. And I've heard someone else ask this question, and I think it's a great question. If you could take out a billboard in Times Square with your own personal message on it, what would it be?
For young lawyers, for anybody?
For anything. You have access to a billboard. You can put whatever you want on it. What goes on the billboard?
What goes around comes around.
Love it. Thanks, Roland.
Thank you.